your Barbie review.
Oh, go ahead.
Why did you hate this movie so much?
It's weird for me too that people have characterized it as hating. I just didn't think it was that good.
And here I was on vacation being bombarded with DMs from people being like, you better get on Keep It and defend Barbie. Girl, I do not care that much. Welcome to Keep It, Cricket Media's show about pop culture and politics and what happens when they smack into each other at an alarming speed. I'm your host, Ira Madison III. I'm a television writer and Fall Out Boy fan.
I'm Louis Fertel. I'm a TV writer and Jane Fonda historian.
Let's get into it. And we are back with an all-new episode of Keep It. I'm Ira Madison III, and, well, I'm dying.
Oh, is that so?
I have COVID.
Oh, and you're recording remotely. Wow, the suspense, the thrills are alive. I love this. You could go any minute.
Well, I'm only here so I won't get fined, as they say.
Oh, you know? I see.
I missed last week. 2 in a row. Tommy might have something to say.
The branding is falling apart. People won't remember your name. I'm Louis Fertel. I'm also the host of Keep It. It's finally back to original recipe Keep It. It's been too long since both Ira and I jabbered about the discourse, and we're ultimately wrong. But instead, we are messing with the formula this week because we have a co-host. He has been here before. He's a hilarious comedian, hilarious writer, and screenwriter. I forget what projects of his we can mention because everybody's on strike, and we're all going to jail if we do the strike wrong. But he is in the Time 100. Jesus, it's crazy to have actually accomplished people here. And he also happens to be a friend of ours. It's Joel Kim Booster. Welcome back to Keep It.
Hello. I'm so glad to be here. I was expecting Ira to be gone, and I was going to be involved in the coup to take over the podcast.
Yes. Mm-hmm. There's always next week.
Happy to be here as a guest alone.
I have actually been really enjoying this era of everyone talking about things that they want to sort of promote. Not even their own projects. It's mostly been people online being like Michelle Buteau has a new show on some streaming network, which I really enjoy. And our friend Solomon worked on it. There's so many posts from people being like, well, I know that SAG is on strike, but I really want to support my girl and her show, so you should go and watch it, and it rhymes with this word.
Yeah.
Sounds above board to me.
The feeling that I have in the pit of my stomach right now during the strike is exactly the same feeling I had during lockdown. I'm so fucking bored that it is unbelievable. Like, it's the same thing of like, why am I, like, I go out, I pick it, I come home, and it's like 2 p.m. and I'm smoking a blunt and playing a video game. And it's like, what am I doing? Like, it seemed fun. It seemed fun for like the first 2 weeks. And now I'm so desperate for any sort of stimulation beyond just sitting on a couch with my boyfriend. Anything.
I feel like when you go to the picket line, basically you have to plan to have a picket buddy and make it a different one than you've had previously, where you spend most of your time walking with them so that you have like a unique experience on the line, because otherwise it's just patrolling and unfortunately talking to the same people and also avoiding the same people on the line. It reminds me of going to warehouse parties in LA where I'm like, well, okay, we made out once in 2017. I cannot do it 7 more times. I cannot. Yeah.
I was at the beginning of the strike very into, socializing and having my walking buddy for the first part, but I have now like devolved straight up into my earbuds are in, I'm holding a sign, I'm listening to Keep It or some other culture podcast. And when the podcast is over, that's when I know it's time to go home,
I've never thought of just taking AirPods. I guess when you walk Disney, there's a lot of space to do that. So maybe I should put my AirPods in there and, get into podcasting.
There's nowhere to hide in New York. It's true. We've talked about this, but it's like it's truly like two like steps that you're walking and you're just repeating it because we have so little sidewalk to walk in front of any place that we picket. But
yeah, when I was in New York, I picketed in front of the Upfronts, and it was just, wow, you were on a slim, like a balance beam basically with everybody else.
You're walking around a hot dog cart. We were walking around that hot dog cart basically.
Yeah.
Have you seen any celebs lately? Because I'm seeing like Colin Farrell. The Paps are getting him. The Paps are getting the hot guy from The Bear. I do not remember his name.
Jeremy Allen
Gene Wilder
White.
is his name. Oh, that's right. Jeremy Allen White. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Short King. Short King's having a moment.
I'm still getting over the first day I was on the line. I saw Natasha Lyonne, and I didn't realize she was like 1'7" or something. I'm still blown away at tiny celebrities.
My thing is that I'm surprised after 4 years of living in LA, I still get a certain kind of starstruck for only specifically people who probably aren't getting recognized a lot. Like the way I lost my shit when I saw Dermot Mulroney on the line. And it's like, I haven't thought about Dermot Mulroney in years. And yet seeing him live and in person, it really made me, I don't know, something inside me shifted. And I was with Guy Branum actually. And Guy Branum is the perfect person. You want Guy Branum with you when you see a celebrity because he has no qualms about being like, Dermot Mulroney, come and get a picture with us on the line.
And Guy will go through all his IMDb credits like at the drop of a hat too. So he'll keep you updated really quick on that. Dermot Mulroney, by the way, and he was in the last Scream, correct?
Yes, he was.
Yes.
That was a performance that started off, I don't know if you're right for this. And then by the end, I was like, you're the best performance in this movie. I love a head fake.
I thought he was a really good killer.
There was a lot of fun there, but I think he sort of tipped it a little immediately for me in the movie. Dermot Mulroney is somebody who you do sort of wonder why he didn't blow up in a bigger way, and then you watch My Best Friend's Wedding, and you're sort of like, I see why he didn't blow up in a bigger way.
I just feel like he's somebody who always reminds you of three other actors. He's sort of like what I call an Emily Blunt. I'm like, you're very talented, but like unfortunately, life has done this thing to you where you always remind me of Katy Perry and Rachel Brosnahan and whomever. There's always there used to be an actress whom I'm obsessed with. I used to bring her up all the time on this podcast. Gene Simmons, who is probably best known from Guys and Dolls. But she's in like Spartacus and she's in the Laurence Olivier Hamlet. She unfortunately looks exactly like a hybrid of Vivien Leigh and Elizabeth Taylor, who are of course more accomplished and more famous than she is. And I always felt like that held her back.
Yeah, really stretching the definition of widely known there, Louis.
There's even a more famous Gene Simmons than Gene Simmons. You know what I'm saying? Okay, we need to get into the tragedies of this week. Keep It often is about pop culture, but mostly it's a podcast that should be called Who Died, because we get into who died. And this week, who was somebody I'd call a Gen X icon, but icon anyway. I mean, you'd be if you didn't know Nothing Compares to You, and the incident on Saturday Night Live where she tore up a picture of the Pope, and by the way, said the word evil as she did it. It was not ambiguous, the intention behind doing this. Sinead O'Connor, to me, one of the most important artists of my lifetime. Ira and I did an episode once where we talked about no-skip albums, and I picked I Do Not Want What I Haven't Got by Sinead O'Connor. This is somebody who had a fucking strange and hard life. This is somebody who survived abuse, and her entire discography and life of interviews is filled with conscience and empathy, even though she's known as a firebrand and an iconoclast, which she is. I was devastated by this. What are your guys' recollections of Sinead O'Connor?
I mean, so I remember Sinead O'Connor, obviously the thing that sticks out the most in my mind is ripping up a picture of the Pope. I remember sitting at home watching SNL in syndication. And also like this was the big one for me was she was a fixture on like I love the 80s, I love the 90s.
Oh, sure.
And so that is where like most of my pop culture from that time as a homeschooler came from. But I remember Sinead really brought together my family and the Catholic Church because we grew up evangelical, so we were very anti-Catholic. And yet this event somehow brought our family together with the Catholic Church, and we all just knew
too bad.
She was bad. Yeah. And so it wasn't until I was an adult that I was really introduced to her music, and then suddenly, it all came sort of full picture for me in terms of how important she actually was. But it's strange to me that she didn't have a bigger rehabilitation moment in the current era, like obviously I think like public opinion has shifted pretty, far away from the Catholic Church in recent memory. And it's surprising to me that Twitter didn't revive her career in a bigger way before she passed.
I think it's fair to say, and she said this herself, like people said, "Oh, you threw away your career with that moment," or whatever. And she said, "No, what actually happened is I shifted into being dependent on being a live performer." And she was always so dynamic as a live performer. I saw her in concert in, I think, 2012 or 2013, and she was still wailing and hitting the notes as she did on her debut on The Lion and the Cobra in '87. And also, she is sort of like a Linda Ronstadt or a Joni Mitchell in that she was never beholden to any music styles of the time. Like, literally, in her biggest moment with Nothing Compares to You, which, of course, is a fabulous Prince cover, she followed that album with an album of jazz and pop standards. She then had a reggae album at some point. This is somebody who did an album of old Irish folk songs. Like, it was just wherever the muse took her, and she was never determined to be, she didn't put out like a major rock album in the time of Jagged Little Pill, for example. She was always doing her own thing, and fabulously so. Ira, are you? I think I tried turning you to a Sinead O'Connor superfan, and you selfishly stayed in your lane at the time.
I did do a pilgrimage to Ireland. I tried to.
And you only found Samantha Mumba.
Yeah, I only found Samantha. Only found Colin Farrell. Making one of
again.
Those.
Yes.
Yeah. But I do like her. I actually really did enjoy. I mean, I guess she didn't really have sort of like Joel was asking, like a sort of like resurgence or sort of like thing of people like re-evaluating her career, but she was like really funny online.
Jesus,
constantly.
is she funny?
Like she loved to tweet, and so that was just a weird thing. Like rediscovering about her. What I really enjoyed was people circulating, obviously, that letter that she had written to Piers Morgan after he was trying to get her on his show after her son like committed suicide, which is like. He's such a fucking ghoul. But she was just like, I don't want to go on the show because you wouldn't even be thinking about me. You'd be thinking about the fact that you really just want to fuck Meghan Markle. Like you're obsessed with her. And he responded because he's such an idiot.
He had the time. I can't believe it.
He was like, oh, you're so funny, Sinead. Like, ha, like they were in on the joke together when like clearly she hated this man. And it was weird seeing him this week too, just going on about how much he loves Sinead O'Connor, etc. And I was like, that bitch did not like you.
Yeah, right. Not begging for the Piers Morgan appraisal of Sinead O'Connor's career. Before moving on, of course, to Pee Wee Herman, I just want to say there are several tracks in Sinead's discography that have gone way under the radar. Fire on Babylon. The other song she performed when she was on SNL was from that album of standards, and it's a cover of a Loretta Lynn song called Success, which was rebranded Success Has Made a Failure of Her Home. Great recording. And she has a song called No Man's Woman. How was that not on the charts when that came out? An awesome empowerment anthem. Very hardcore feminist, in addition to being hardcore in general. Love Sinead O'Connor. Pee Wee Herman. Another, like, from the same era, really. Like, Pee Wee's Playhouse is really from the same time as Sinead's coming out. I just want to say, first of all, the amount of comics who apparently had a very close relationship with Paul Reubens, I did not know how sweet a man he was. Everybody from Kathy Griffin to Lorraine Newman, who are both in the Groundlings, which is the L.A. comedy troupe club that Paul Reubens started in. Adam Shankman, the director and my friend, he was recounting how rad a person he was. Somebody who I'm sure when he started this character as a live act, Pee Wee Herman, he did not think it would come to really represent a quality in people of daffiness and irreverence and fun. And I think afterwards, in reevaluating how far this character went in both movies and on his TV show, really became kind of an anthemic sort of guy. And there's no second one of Paul Reubens. If you're a fan of Pee Wee Herman, you could only get more Pee Wee Herman to get that fix. Just a daffy, rad, hilarious character. And Paul Reubens, a hilarious actor. I'm thinking of his stint on 30 Rock as the Habsburg prince, who is just a complete mess and unbelievable.
He's the best part of the original Buffy movie too, which he plays a vampire in. Like if you haven't seen his death scene in that movie where Christy Swanson like stabs him with a stake, and he does this full like 5-minute extended death scene where he's like crawling on the floor and kicking the wall. Like he was so funny, and it was nice seeing him do things beyond Pee Wee Herman, which is really interesting because I feel like he is an omnipresent sort of pop culture figure, but I don't know that I was necessarily obsessed with Pee Wee Herman like the show. Maybe I was as a kid and I would watch it, but I feel like maybe I recognize like the animated series that they had more, that I feel like was on Fox Kids or something, than like the actual show. I feel like our specific age was sort of like
we're like 6 years too young. Yes.
Paying attention to that. I mean, I remember the movie, Pee-wee's Big Adventure, one of Tim Burton's greatest films. But even that, I feel like I discovered that later after I was already a Tim Burton fan. The magic to me really came when he did, a few years ago, I feel like he did like a Broadway version of Pee-wee. And that show was really like moving to me.
It's funny though. I also feel like I was slightly too young to get into Pee-wee's Playhouse as a live action thing. I think it actually sort of terrified me when I was.
It is a little scary. Young. He is scary. Yeah. Yes. And the other characters are scary.
The characters are scary, but I do think that like if you look at all comedians of my generation, you can draw a pretty clear straight line from Pee-wee's Playhouse to a lot of honestly like Eric Andre. I think like a lot of like the Adult Swim sensibility of alt comedy that has popped up in recent years is in part like he has so many sons and daughters out there who are doing the same thing and just like tweaking it slightly to make it more palatable to a modern audience. But I think like you see a lot of his influence in comedy that is not aimed at children, that it is aimed at adults today.
He is that wild combination of it's for little kids and also adults. Yeah. Just like the subversion is so clear.
But not in like a
adult
Pixar
watching,
way. In
no.
Any way, like there is no like, it is not, aimed at getting adults to feel nostalgic for childhood. It is about like a sense of play that is childlike, but is being applied in a very specific way.
Definitely. No, these are two pop culture figures. Again, there's no second one of these people, and I think we should always make sure to commemorate what makes these people individuals, because we won't get that thing again. It's like appreciate fucking Cher while she's still here. Guess there's no second, and it makes me sad to actually have to commemorate them only after they go.
Louis.
Yeah, right. Okay. There will be. Yeah, okay.
I keep thinking of that. Truly one of my favorite. I love how Madonna continues to churn out iconic pop culture moments. But I kept thinking about recently and seeing people share it. Remember the clip where she's like, David Bowie, gone.
Yes.
Michael Jackson, gone. But I'm still here. And it's like
haunting you.
It's like I'm the last icon. But of course, like Cher's probably watching that like, bitch, I'm going to live longer than you.
Also, she definitely would start the sentence with bitch. I don't think any human being has started more sentences with bitch than Cher. But anyway, we have a huge show to get to. We are going to talk about, strangely, Project Runway, which we are all watching. And I think we'll get into a discussion of these now legendary reality TV shows that still are on, and that maybe even peaked in relevance something like 15 years ago and what they bring to the table now. We will also talk about celebrity breakups, our favorites ever. We're still in this time where we're processing how Ariana and SpongeBob could do this to us, their lives, I don't know if you feel jilted or what, but we're going to get into that. And then also, Aly and AJ are here. Did I get that right? Aly and AJ are here.
Yeah, they had nothing better to do. They were like,
thank you so much.
Let's come and talk to these faggots.
Right. They'll be like, what is this? Okay. Yes, we'll be back with more right after this.
So it's starting to feel like The View here because we're talking about reality TV. And I feel like that's all they do on that show now.
Is that really? I forget to check in with The View. Who's on it at this point? Is it like the grandchildren of Meredith Vieira? Who's there?
I mean, Whoopi Goldberg's still there, dressed like she's working in Katharine Hepburn's garden. She's got the flannels. She seems high as hell, and I would be too. If I were hosting The View that long, like I feel like it would be maybe 6 years before I'd came to work just stoned every day. So,
well, it feels like every couple of weeks a headline appears about something that Whoopi has said on The View, akin to basically like Whoopi Goldberg has had it. And it's like insert blank, like it's just always some tirade. And it's always appreciated. I'm never not on Whoopi's side, but it does feel like she's a little over it at this point.
And also that she's a good person to have had it because she's too tired to walk off the show. So she'll just sit there. So you can keep talking to her.
I was thinking about Whoopi yesterday because I was just thinking about, my grandmother's favorite movies for this essay I was writing. And I'm like, one thing she did love was like a fucking Whoopi Goldberg movie. And I was talking to her about how when I saw Jurassic Park as a kid, like it was the first movie that like I had ever been dropped off like to see by myself, like seeing my little dinosaur movie. And I was like, well, what movie did you see by yourself in the theater while I was seeing the dinosaur movie? And she couldn't recall. So I was looking up the movies that were out then. And we figured out that she saw Made in America, the Whoopi Goldberg, Ted Danson movie where Nia Long is her daughter. And then Nia Long does some test and finds out that her dad isn't black. And then Whoopi finds out that the sperm donor she used was a white man, and the white man was Ted Danson.
Wow. Speaking of iconic celebrity breakups.
Oh, yeah. Iconic. There are some familiar images from that one, yes. One is popping to mind right now.
Louis, you should try that out.
You know what? I won't. I will go ahead and not do that.
I give you permission.
I'm sure the internet will concur.
Yeah, yes. It's a trap.
We'll put that on the Crooked Grid.
Right.
See what people have to say. We're talking about reality TV today because season 20 of Project Runway is on. And it was funny when Joel suggested that we talk about that this week because I feel like I discovered this season was airing by happenstance. I came home one night and I feel like we're in a weird Bravo lull. There's really just the new Roni. And then I'm kind of into the new season of OC. But Atlanta's not really great this season. And I'm not really watching as much Bravo as I feel like I usually am. And I was like, well, here's this whole season of Project Runway. There was 6 episodes at that point. And I started it. And I feel like I watched all 6 of those in one night because this season is fucking great. And since it's an all-star season, it has all of your favorites back. More favorites than I expected. I mean, Rami Kashu is on the show, and seeing him walk in that first episode, I was immediately taken back to the season that he was on, season 4, and thinking that he was the hottest man I've ever seen on TV at that point. And he's still incredibly hot.
He is still incredibly hot, but I did turn to my boyfriend. My boyfriend has never seen a season of Project Runway, except for maybe a few of the newer ones with Miss Kloss. And I was like, oh, he's really good. He's really good. He's one of the best ones. And he has not been turning it out this season very much. And I do find that I think I'm probably remembering him being really, really good. And he was great on his original season. A finalist, came in second to Christian Siriano. But I do think I was a little bit blinded by his hotness in his original season because he's not giving so much this season.
I think the issue is though, as the seasons progress, it's like Drag Race. People become aware of where they need to be super primed. And, you know, when you're in the early seasons of a reality show, particularly like Project Runway, you don't really know the ins and outs of what's expected of you. And now you have these people from season like 16, 17, and 18 who work probably 3 times as fast as these original contestants did. That said, it is so amazing to see Kara-san, who was a finalist from season 1, which I think is one of the greatest reality TV shows of all time, period. And this woman has not skipped a beat. She is still she's a professional costumer. She works on Disney's Descendants. At the time she was on the show originally, she was a costumer for 8 Simple Rules for Dating My Teenage Daughter. And that's a show that had cute clothes. And I just remember thinking at the time, like, she was a very new type of reality contestant because it wasn't like American Idol where everybody necessarily came in as a total amateur, like a pretty good singer from their hometown. This was an industry professional who was, worked in fashion, but still there was this ambition to be, you know, a name and a designer on her own right, not just making costumes for people. And I think that's what one of the enduring and endearing things about Project Runway is it really humanized the industry of the idea of working in fashion. You know, like, I don't remember before that having any idea of what it meant to be a costumer, if that was at all possible. You know, the idea that there would be wannabes out there who aren't famous yet or working yet. And she is still turning it out on this show. I love her.
Correct me if I'm wrong, though. Bravo sort of pioneered like the professional class reality show. I'm thinking of like Top Chef as well. I feel like a lot of competition reality shows prior to these 2 shows really were about assembling an assortment of regular, everyday, quote unquote, people to do physical challenges or compete in some regard, not connected
Let us
to
not
whatever they do
forget
professionally.
Sheer Genius.
Yeah,
you know,
I fucking loved that show. I love Jacqueline Smith as the host of it too. She was both a good host and completely aloof, which is, I think, you know, what I would call the Padma Lakshmi standard.
But it does feel like, and I think they've all but come out and said this, that this is a test season. If this season pops off, they will continue Project Runway. If it does not, then this is sort of its big send off as well, which I can't decide how I feel about that, because the thing is I watch every Project Runway clone. I'm talking Making the Cut. I'm talking Next in Fashion. I'm talking The Hype, which is HBO Max's short-lived reality show where they do just streetwear, which is really great. And the thing is you are sort of seeing the problems with the Project Runway system that a lot of these other shows have fixed. And mainly, this is the biggest pet peeve that I have with Project Runway after watching these other shows, is these other shows have really moved on from expecting these designers to be also seamstresses as well. And it's one of the central conflicts of a lot of these designers on Project Runway that you see, which is, are you a good seamstress or are you a good designer? And because these other shows now are farming out a lot of the work to seamstresses, like in Making the Cut specifically, I think was one of the first ones where they don't construct these garments. They really only just design them and then send them off to be constructed by a seamstress. And you're seeing that a lot in Project Runway this season, where really good designers are going home or ending up in the bottom because they simply, especially the older designers who are from the earlier seasons, who have really moved on from having to construct their own designs, you're seeing them struggle in a way that I don't think you'd see them struggle if they were given seamstresses to actually bring some of these designs to life.
And it's not particularly telegenic to see someone not be good at sewing either. Yeah. So it's not like a really compelling thing to watch on a reality show.
I do wish that you still had to sew things on Drag Race.
Yeah.
That I do wish were. It's weird that like that was always the original element of Project Runway, and now we've gotten away from that in the fashion shows that we see now. And then it's weird that like RuPaul's Drag Race has sort of gone in that direction now too, where like it's just everyone comes in with like a glamorous outfit already made for them, which is not the reality for most queens who are initially cast on Drag Race, because you sort of have to be on the show and get a name for yourself to then be able to afford to get outfits made for you.
Well, that's almost a relic too of like Drag Race started as an amalgamation of like a parody of every reality competition show that was on at the time. Like it really did start as like a parody of America's Next Top Model and Project Runway and all of these other shows that were on at the time, and like sort of aping the beats of competition reality shows. And then it became its own thing slowly over time, where it's, and I think like that's like almost a holdover, although you still do see the construction challenges on that show. It's just, you know, usually not, they're not giving a lot of the time now because they've lost the skill.
What's interesting is rewatching Project Runway, a show that, by the way, still very much resembles its original format. Like, in certain ways, it still feels like it's 2006 when you watch that show. These shows, this whole cluster of reality shows that still exist, American Idol, The Voice, etc., they've now, for me, taken the place of what the brain space I reserve for something like The Price is Right, where something you would watch, and it's just nice that something that old and set in stone is still going on. You know, there's like this comfort level of, oh my God, it's like walking into a Panera. It's still 2004. Yeah. It's like the French onion soup is exactly the same. You know,
it does give the exact same feeling that you have when you go to your hometown and visit the Barnes and Noble.
Oh, fuck yeah.
It's just so deeply comforting.
Yeah. I was just talking with our friend Riri was in a Barnes & Noble over the weekend. We were just going back and forth about, she goes, sitting culture. What happened to that? And I was like, sometimes you just want to walk into a place and see a large picture book of Tiger Woods on display. Who is buying that? And yet it's for everyone. Yeah.
It's for everyone. Now, wait, this is an interesting question about Project Runway now versus then is, do you miss Heidi and Tim? Because that's the biggest change.
I have enjoyed the irony of Christian being the mentor figure to people he competed against on the season. Like him talking to Rami is very interesting. It is weird though, like Christian Siriano on his season was known for being this quotable, quote unquote personality, but I think he is a better designer than reality TV star. I enjoy him. And by the way, his insights are extremely direct. Like people just up and abandon their designs and start anew when he tells them to do something, which is not Tim Gunn style. But I like him enough. I prefer Tim Gunn. And then in terms of host, Heidi, I think Heidi got a little cheesier as the show went on, as she became more producer Heidi than host Heidi.
Yeah,
on Making the Cut, they were insufferable.
Yeah, it is tough. I do miss sort of the pageantry of Tim Gunn occasionally, but Christian is better at the job. If I'm really looking at it. Like, and I do wonder if part of the reason he's less of a clown than he was, and I don't mean that pejoratively, but like less of a like reality TV show clown now, is that I do think he sort of got burned a little bit with the way, like he was a reality show figure that could have only existed in 2008. He mainstreamed a one specific word in particular.
Hot tea mess. Yes, I don't mean to. Yes.
That, I mean, when we talk about him being quotable, like that's sort of the quote. I think he's hyper aware of like that sort of being his rep going into this, and he's calmed down as a person so much because of it, and he's done a lot to make amends for that. And I think like he is probably hyper aware of not wanting to be that guy again on television this go around.
He also, by the way, I just want to say, is fucking brilliant. I mean, like the clothes he has turned out over the years, like there would be a hole in fashion without him. Like just he's somebody who takes the assignment of dressing not size zero bodies, not as a quote unquote challenge, but as the work. You know, I feel like he's been always like, let's make everybody look fucking awesome. Yeah. You know,
which is another big change to modern Project Runway that you didn't see in the older seasons, which it's interesting to see. They haven't really made it a storyline. In previous seasons of new Project Runway, they've really made it a storyline of some designers struggling because now all of the models are a mix of different body types. And you've seen in the past, they've made it a storyline that designers struggle with that challenge. You're not really seeing it this season. Like no one's complaining about getting a different sized model than the standard or anything like that. But I do think that it is, it's exciting. And I think that like Christian was a big, sort of reason for that change, and is seeing them design for different bodies, because it is a reality of this industry now that people of all sizes expect to look fierce on the runway.
And when you think about, I guess, his quote unquote makeover from, being the person who made that word famous, and now we see him in a completely different light. he really has just sort of like carved out a space where it feels sometimes like it is only him. I mean, like obviously there are plenty of designers, who make clothes for all different body types, but like people still think of him when they're like, like I can't get like an outfit for this red carpet because, like this person won't dress me or it's last minute. The people still are always just sort of like, at Christian Siriano, can you help me? Like he's sort of synonymous with that now. And I love him being on the show. I will say, I don't miss Heidi and Tim. But who I do miss is Michael Kors.
Yeah.
Yes. Unfortunately, he could boil it down to a fucking hilarious quote every time.
The critiques on the critiques on the runway just do not hit as hard as they did when Michael and Nina were playing off of each other.
Yeah. No one is focused really on the female crotch more than Michael Kors. And
despairing at a crotch.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
And his way with words, the way he would just describe a garment was the funniest thing in the world to me.
Barefoot Appalachian Lil Abner Barbie. Who can forget that sequence of words? Like John Jacob Jingleheimer Schmidt.
She's a grandmother going to get some coffee, and she ran into a lawnmower on the way. It's just like everything. It's just the other people just don't really have that for me.
Well, and the last thing I'll say on Project Runway 2 that is especially interesting about this season of All Stars, because it is so many new people and so many old people, is you really do feel the way that these shows have shifted. Like if you remember in the early seasons of shows like Project Runway and Top Chef, it was so much about people living in a house and sort of the interpersonal conflict that also would come along with the competition. And they're not interested in that anymore. They're just not interested in it, except you see the one person that's sort of carrying over that vibe in this season is Corto a little bit. Like, she
sort of went after Anna.
Corto is fucking hilarious.
She is. Yeah. She went after Anna for like being like, well, she's just redoing the same fucking design. But then like, that conflict was so interesting to me because like, if you are trying to get a job like in the fashion industry, it's like you want to see someone's signature thing on the show. And these people have been like building signatures. But yeah, she is the one who's still sort of like giving you old school, messy competition drama. I mean, like I remember on Top Chef, that infamous season of Top Chef where like they all bullied Marcel in the house.
Yeah, they shaved his head.
Yeah. You don't get that shit anymore now.
No. Well, and right. even that brief moment on Project Runway this season, that would have been a half a season arc in early Project Runway. Is this conflict over whether or not Anna was designing the same dress over and over again, and they literally only allowed it to happen for one like half episode basically before they are seen in their hotel room apologizing to each other, et cetera, and it's almost disappointing.
I will say, even though I think Tim did his time on the show, and I don't crave him being back, because I'm sure he's sick of it, whatever. He is such a one-of-a-kind celebrity. I just want to say, like, when he emerged, like, how many, like, gay men of that age who had no interest in showbiz prior and just had this life in academia, and they suddenly become TV stars, and you get the sense of, like, a kind of normalish gay life lived. Like there's just not another celebrity like that. He's from a generation that, I mean, that's the generation that was hit most by AIDS, for example. Like, so you had the sense that he had lived a full, interesting gay life in an industry that's mostly gay. I'm just very grateful to have him. He was also, of course, extremely quotable himself. One time he was on this show with Ira and I, one of our favorite moments ever on this show. He was on Zoom and I was like, did you ever think you'd be an Emmy-winning TV star? And out of nowhere, he pulls his Emmy into frame, and we were all laughing. I was like, you're just brandishing your Emmy like Cloris Leachman. And then he goes, oh, I love her. So Tim Gunn, come back to keep it.
I think that was a beautiful thing that he did for gay men. But I also, lastly, want to point out, too, that, like, Bravo started really with like this Project Runway stuff, and like Life on the D-List and etc., and now has grown into Housewives, etc., Andy Cohen world. But it's really sort of always been, we saw glimpses of gay life on this show, but it's always really been sort of like a channel for women. And I feel like that's never more obvious than the fact that, yes, it might have inspired like gay kids around the US to like get into fashion and stuff. But I feel like it also inspired just like ordinary women who liked fashion and would then see like some like random like stern woman or just some like girl like Nora in the season 1 like doing fashion. And then they were like, oh, I can do that too. And it inspired them. But then I thought what was really funny was Nora was the first one to go because it was painfully obvious. Yeah. She looked fabulous. And she dressed really well. But I thought it was painfully obvious of her like being like, I did this in season 1. I have my kids. I'm at home, but I still love fashion. Coming back and doing the show in that first episode. And I was like, oh, she's going home.
You don't have a prayer against these other pros. This isn't your world.
Yeah. This isn't your world.
Mm-hmm. Lovely to see her for that episode, though.
All right. When we are back, we're joined by the wonderful Aly and AJ. Keep It is brought to you by Helix. If you're looking for better sleep, you need to go ahead and upgrade your mattress with Helix. The Helix lineup offers 20 unique mattresses, including the award-winning Luxe Collection, the newly released and high-end Helix Elite Collection, a mattress designed for big and tall sleepers, and even a mattress made just for kids. And let me tell you something. Patti Smith loves that one.
Just kids. Yes, I know the reference. I was just thinking about out of bed, winning an award, and getting emotional and crying. Anyway. Take the Helix Sleep Quiz and find your perfect mattress in under 2 minutes. And it's shipped straight to your door free of charge. They even offer a 100-night trial and a 10 to 15-year warranty to try out your new Helix mattress. Side sleeper, choose a model with memory foam layers to provide optimal pressure relief. There are also models with a more responsive foam to cradle your body for essential support in stomach and back sleeping positions. Plus, check out enhanced cooling features to keep you from overheating while you sleep. It's no wonder Helix has over 12,000 five-star reviews. And if I knew how to type reviews, I would be the 12,001st. Love this bed. I've never regretted having one. It's such a pleasure. It looks great in my room. It's perfect for my room. And it's so sturdy. And of course, also, I put it together myself, which, if you know me, I was not born for practical adult skills. You know, I'm not throwing together a meal anytime soon.
Bob to build her, you're Wreck-It Ralph.
The two genders. Helix is offering 20% off all mattress orders and 2 free pillows for our listeners. Go to helixsleep.com/keepit. That's helixsleep.com/keepit. This is their best offer yet, and it won't last long. With Helix, better sleep starts now.
We are so happy to have these incredible guests. They are artists, they're activists, they're icons, and they are on the road right now, touring their latest record with Love From. Please welcome to Keep It, the Golden Songbirds themselves, Aly and AJ.
Thank you. That's a very sweet intro.
What a sweet introduction. Golden Songbirds. I love that.
I mean, I feel like you've been serenading me with music my entire life. So, I mean, I have to say that. I mean, it is so fun to, you know, see you releasing new music and also having it be good. And I feel like so well received. And I remember, I feel like maybe it was like right pre-COVID. Like I saw a show you guys done in like LA, and it was just like, it was so much fun seeing like this new sort of evolution from like, you know, Into the Rush, which I heard on the Disney Channel, you know, in 2005, which was like, which was also like freshman year of college for me. So like I was fully a freshman in college, listening to Rush and Chemicals React. So maybe, you know, not like everyone else who was a freshman in college then, but that was my jam. I was a Disney Channel addict then.
Oh, thank you. That's really sweet. Ira, when did we first meet?
I feel like we met years ago through Raymond.
I think it was.
I was trying to figure it out too.
I can't remember what year, but it was a while ago. I mean, it was definitely pre-pandemic, like you said. Yeah, I love that Raymond like connected us. He's the connector of all wonderful people.
Yeah, and you've met Raymond Braun. Louis.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, yes. He's the one who can't stop doing triathlons. Yes, right.
Correct.
He has a problem.
He cannot stop.
I open Instagram and I'm like, I'm exhausted, baby. I'm gonna close this.
I know. He has been our best friend now for 22 years.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah.
He's like swimming in Asia right now, I'm sure.
Yes. He's actually heading to Turkey soon.
Yes. We know his schedule. We just saw him the other night and we were talking about
We know his schedule. I know his flight path. He goes to Berlin next. Like, I know all of this because I'm always like, oh my gosh, Raymond, please be safe. Going into shark-infested waters. What are you doing?
Well, I mean, Fire Island is shark-infested waters now.
That's true.
This summer.
That's a good point.
So the sharks are everywhere.
Fire Island versus Turkey. What's more dangerous?
I'll tell you what has better food. And it's not the place with a restaurant called Canteen. So even just on the concept of that, I find that so just like interesting. Like not just, like doing one is enough. I have a friend here, Charlie, and his friend Nick, who they ran the Iron Man in like Austria this year, and they were like training for it. And it was very intense when they were training for it, and like then you didn't see them anymore. They weren't going out, like they weren't drinking anymore. And now that it's over, like I have my friend back, and he was like, yeah, that was like really fun and like intense to train for, but he's like, never again.
Wow. It was like a one and done. I respect that.
I respect that too. He's like, nope, it's not happening again.
Just challenging yourself once, I feel like is all you really need to do. But,
Okay, I have to ask about this album and also just the way you guys collaborate in general. First of all, the music, this is such a pleasing album with Love From. What is the greatest disagreement you guys have had working on music together? Because I feel like you guys seem so in sync and like so just like ideal partners, period, without even being sisters also. Do you have any memorable bouts where you were battling to figure something out?
Yeah, we definitely have those moments. I mean, a lot of times it's like one of us preferring a song over the other and feeling like maybe that song should stay on the record and the other one is thinking maybe it gets cut. So sometimes that happens, even though we're both involved in the creation of the song. So we're kind of like ready to sacrifice our own child. But at the end of the day, like we usually come around to someone's side, whether it's mine or AJ's. I want to say on With Love From, we didn't have a lot of disagreements. I mean, we're very much on the same page when it comes to like mixing notes, when it comes to like fades and outros and all of those types of things. Like we're very much on the same page. Even when we're like cutting the band and we hear a part that we feel like is unnecessary or something that's missing, like we always jump in and we're like kind of finishing each other's sentence saying the same thing. I think sometimes we might disagree on like a lyric line. That'll happen. It's hard because we're writing from our own perspectives, but as a duo. So it can get tricky when, my personal story has to become somewhat AJ's story as well and vice versa. But we manage it. I don't know how, but we do.
Yeah, it's true. I can't think of like one moment where we were like, oh my gosh, this was like a colossal meltdown for our band. I think it would be so much more interesting if we had one of those stories. I can't think of something. I think creatively we're really compatible. If anything, like we fight more outside of music as like sisters and who we are as people together than we do as like a work team.
Yeah. I think we did have a moment where I was trying to cut, this was way before we even, I think, recorded the song like officially. I was trying to cut Way of Nature, Way of Grace, which is funny because a lot of people really enjoy that song and I really like playing it now live, but I was just afraid that I don't know. I just was afraid that it didn't fit with the record or something. Like, I don't know. I think we also had a bunch of parts in it originally that made it kind of sound a certain way. And so we stripped it back to make it a little bit more just like raw in its production. And I think that helped. And then the end kind of starts to fill out with this big band moment.
But that was definitely a song where I was like, we're not cutting this. And it wasn't like a fight, but it was like this song is not going anywhere. Sorry.
Yeah, that was definitely a moment that AJ was like putting her foot down. I'm glad she did, because I think ultimately the song came around to be really beautiful. But I think it took like, you know, some songs just take a little bit of extra like TLC, and sometimes that's stripping things back, and sometimes that's adding more production. So for whatever reason, that song, it just needed to be stripped back, and we have this like really beautiful kind of guitar picking part at the beginning that wasn't originally there, and that I think really helped.
I really enjoyed when, you know, you first debuted 10 Years, right? That I feel like had, Take Me in it, and I thought that was sort of, you know, like 80s, it was sort of like synthy, it was pop rock, and now I've loved like this evolution of hearing like your different sounds and influences all the way to With Love From. And I just sort of want to know, like, how have your music influences sort of changed over the years from when you were first making music? Because I feel like, you know, if you're first making music and then, you know, you're making Into the Rush, like, was that even like music you were listening to then? Or was it, you know, sort of like, this is just the music we have to make, you know, because we're making a Disney album, etc., you know, and we want this kind of pop? Or was that stuff that you were into now, and now your music taste is sort of like deepened and you're listening to other things, and that's reflected in your records?
I think for the most part, we've gotten really lucky in the sense that from the really early creating stage of like putting out a record as teens, we weren't really being controlled in a really severe way. Like, we actually were signed based on the fact that we were singer-songwriters and that we were playing acoustic guitar and that we were a duo. Everything about why they wanted to sign us is kind of what brought the magic of that record. Therefore, they didn't feel like they had to control too much, because it was the beauty of what they were signing. So I really feel like Rush, making that record was very much a culmination of like inspiration, what Aly and I were listening to at that part of our career. And then from there, you know, I think we've just completely evolved. I think for a bit of time, we were kind of figuring out more of like an 80s synth pop direction. And then, you know, we've written stuff that maybe leans a little more like 90s rock or grunge. And then we were like, no, that's not really feeling like us. And it's fun, because as artists, you can have so many influences and be into so many different things. It's hard to find your lane, because you're like, well, I actually enjoy all these lanes and I want to be in all of them. And then eventually you're like, but I need to come up with a cohesive body of work that feels really good live and that feels like me and that resonates with who I am now, but also who I might become. You know, music is really tricky because it doesn't always age properly with you. And so I think this record, you know, it's very new still, but I really enjoy playing this record live. And to me, that's always a really good indication that it's going to work for a long period of time.
I think us touring again and playing these songs live is what helped get us on the right track when it came to the albums and the consistency of what we wanted to create, and that it was music that transitioned live really seamlessly. And I think that that's not always easy. You know, it's funny sometimes when we try to resurrect songs either deep from the past or, you know, even within the last like 5 or 6 years, and we play it with the band, and there's just certain songs that just don't translate live as well. It's a lot more electronic. And then there's songs that just make sense. Everybody's able to play all of the musical parts that are in the song organically, and it just works. So that's, I think, the beauty of these 2 new records is that they're very playable live, and I think they really resonate with a live audience. But I think we've always been playing music that we were enjoying and listening to, but just in our version, that, you know, whatever you want to call it, for the Aly and AJ version of, you know, singer-songwriter or pop rock or whatever it was for that moment. But I think a lot of bands have definitely inspired us over the years, but they're like all over the map, you know, in terms of genre.
Is there any part of your career or any type of song that you once worked on that you've actually outgrown? Like, is it awkward to outgrow any old type of music? Like, is there stuff you basically wouldn't do anymore that you once did?
Well, it's funny because, you know, I kind of thought that was the case for our first album, because that album is 18 years old now. But my sister and I did this experiment in June where we played the entirety of the album front to back for the first time ever in years. Actually ever, because we never really toured that entire album where we played it front to back. And playing it live, I definitely was like, some of these songs don't fully work now because lyrically they're really immature, because we were obviously writing them from a completely different place in life. But in general, when it comes to the melodies and the musical elements to the songs and just what Aly and I were writing during that time, I'm actually like, some of this is quite advanced. I wouldn't say like this record's perfect now, but a lot of it I really enjoyed. And I wouldn't have known that had we not played the whole record as adults front to back. And it was literally just an experiment. We played a special show and we recorded it, and it's going to come out during the 20-year anniversary of Into the Rush in 2025. So I'm really excited for that. And I think some of those songs actually have lived on in a really beautiful way. I don't think all of them work now, but again, it's because we're adults singing, you know, more childish material.
Mm-hmm. That's so wild to have recorded something and be like, this is coming out in 2 years.
Right.
I know.
Totally.
Yeah, we are, we're really ambitious people, and we're kind of insane. And Aly and I were like, we're going to challenge ourselves, and we're going to just do it now, because who knows what 2025 is going to look like, or next year. So let's just record the record now, have it ready to go, and put it out in 2 years. It was fun. We learned all the material. We were nervous as hell. We're never nervous on stage. We were fucking terrified. Only because we were like, we have not played these songs in so long, and it came together beautifully. Like, it was a really sweet, emotional night, and it was lovely. Our fans were like freaking out, and we were loving it. It was really special. One
song I really want to ask about, which is such a banger, and I feel like you probably know what I'm gonna ask about. It's Joan of Arc on the Dance Floor. I feel like even when I'm playing, like, when I'm like having like friends over and I'm playing, you know, like music, like, you know, like the gays, like, they're like, oh, we want to hear like a Beyonce, like a Dua, like Tovla, whatever. Like, someone is always suggesting this song, and it's not me either. Like, people are like, they fucking love that song, and I've heard it out before too, and it's great. And I'm just like, what was your vibe going into making that song, and like, where is also the rest of that dance album?
You know, we did these kind of 2 song pairings between Joan of Arc and Attack of Panic. And for whatever reason, we were like in this moment of wanting to create, like, I don't know, our version of a dance track that would be played in like a Berlin club. And we were really inspired by Giorgio Moroder at the time. And we were listening a lot to him in the studio with the 2 collaborators that we worked with. And that's how those songs kind of became what they are. Like, they were just born out of, I think, us just like enjoying this dance music and like having fun and like running around the studio thinking, okay, maybe there's like a version of an Aly and AJ song that lives in this space. I don't think that we wanted to keep going down that, I don't know, that version of music. I think only because, again, it wasn't songs that felt like they could translate live. It felt like a song that you'd have like a DJ playing in a club, which is awesome. But it didn't feel like something you would have with like a full band. But we're trying to rework Joan of Arc to play live and put into our set in a way that feels like it's still honoring the original. Like, we're not slowing it down or anything, but we're just changing some of the instrumentation so it becomes a little bit more organic, and see if we can play it in a live setting. But we just played it for our first Pride show that we've ever performed, and it went off great. And we were like, I think the song was meant for the gays.
Yeah, totally. I actually think Raymond kind of manifested us making those 2 songs, because there are times he's heard every demo in our career, and he'll be like, can you guys just make some more like gay club dance anthems? And we're like, oh, okay, Raymond, sure. And so I honestly feel like those 2 songs came out of a conversation from Raymond. But it's funny, there's not like a full album that sounds like that. It's just waiting in the wings.
No.
I think if Aly and I wanted to, we could do it actually pretty quickly, just because I think that kind of writing comes really easily for us. But in a way, it just doesn't feel like where we're at currently. It feels more like a moment, not like the setting we're in right now as musicians. But I actually do love those 2 songs, and we're finding a way to incorporate them again live. I actually think Joan of Arc could go off in LA at the Greek.
I mean, listen, just split the show into two parts like Renaissance, okay? Like, come out, give us, the Aly and AJ, and then you're like, okay, now welcome to the dance floor.
There you go. That's a good idea.
I don't mind that.
We love a narrative at a concert, yes.
We do. We love eras.
One thing I think is interesting about the two of you is you have very varied and different acting credits, and I was curious, which of the others' acting credits are you most jealous of?
That's funny. Nobody's ever asked us that.
No one has ever asked us that.
Most jealous of.
We've both done some really cool projects, and it's neat because acting is like our big difference. Like we're very different actors, whereas I think on stage we're different performers as well. But when we come together as a duo, there are a lot more similarities than when we're acting. I think for me, I honestly would have loved to have been in Easy A. I think that movie is so iconic. And like the amount of people that stop Aly for that, I'm like, honestly though, Aly's the only person I can picture in that role. So it wouldn't have been like I would play that part. It's just that would be the project she was a part of that I would have loved to have been in.
For me, I would say Shira, because it's got such a fan base and such a fandom behind the show that is so fun to watch. Just to watch AJ interact with like all types of people that come up and talk about their love for the show. AJ is like really talented with voice work, and I have not quite cracked it yet. So maybe that would be mine on her IMDb list.
That's cute, Aly.
I think Easy A also has maybe one of the best sets of parents in any movie. That's Stanley Tucci and Patricia Clarkson, right?
Yeah, great
set
of parents.
I need to find like a BuzzFeed list of best parents in a movie because that's got to be up there.
I agree with that.
Oh, for sure. You're so right.
I will say that speaking of your credits, like, first of all, AJ, I love Support the Girls. So
I love Support the Girls.
That is a classic, and that deserved so much more attention than it got.
I agree. It is a good film, a great film.
Yeah.
And you and Haley became like besties from that, which is so special.
Yeah. So Haley Liu became a really dear friend of mine. And we had known each other before that movie, but not really well. And then we clicked on that film, and we've been friends ever since. Regina is like the nicest human being ever. And I really enjoyed that film. I agree that it was kind of like a sleeper in the sense that like it didn't really get enough hype. I actually think it was a lot better than it was perceived. Like, I don't think a lot of people knew about it, but I love that movie. I'm glad you guys do too.
Yeah. And then, Aly, I watched every single episode of iZombie. So that was my show. I was obsessed with that show. But, your best credit to me will always be The Roommate.
The Roommate, yes. Yes, with the famous shower scene, of course.
Yes.
What an iconic scene where she gets her belly button ring ripped out.
The way that you remember that movie coming out and you just feel like, oh, okay, here's this like knockoff single white female, and like really just the way that like I feel like that is one of those movies from that early 2010s era of like, like we're making a lot of like thrillers that are sort of like based on ones we've seen already before, that like people bring up The Roommate. The Roommate was fun.
Very fun movie.
I would have thought that people would bring that up. I didn't know that. That's cool to know.
Yeah, no, The Roommate is sort of like in there with like, like we don't have like our like Basic Instincts or whatever that were like, these movies weren't nominated for any awards or things, but like The Roommate is up there with like Swim Fan for me. Okay, these are classics.
I got
Swim
you.
Fan.
Okay.
Swim Fan, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, was that with Julia Stiles?
No, that was Jesse
was
Bradford and
Erica Christensen, the
Erica
Julia Stiles
Erica
lookalike.
Christensen, yes. Who I very often confuse with
Julia Stiles.
Julia Stiles. By the way, you're amazing. You're like, you guys are like IMDb.
We have a clinical issue. Somebody put a pop culture like chip in our brains at a very young age, and we can't escape it. So
it's incredible.
Right.
I'm impressed.
So I guess lastly, just want to ask, like you love making music together. You have very different sort of like acting sensibilities. I mean, like you've done a couple projects together. Like is is like an acting project for both of you something that like you really consider that you really want to do in your future, or do you want to just sort of like, you know?
For sure. I mean, we're still in development phase of a animated TV show that we've been working on now for a while. Like, when did
Cowbells,
we start this?
the animated series?
It's not Cowbells.
It is
Although
not Cowbells.
that would be hilarious if it was an animated version of Cowbells.
I feel like we missed the boat on Cowbells, like, mattering or meaning something. Like, if it was maybe like 10 years ago, maybe it could have still had a moment. I feel like Cowbells 2 now, people would be like, what? Why? To me, I don't know. Maybe there's still a huge fan base out there for Cowbells. But it's an animated project that would involve the two of us, and music is a part of it. So that would be like a dream project. If it ever ends up coming to fruition, it would be really special. And then we definitely want to make another film together again. That's definitely on the horizon for us. I don't think that, you know, we'll ever tire of like working on set together. I think we always really enjoy those moments, even though we don't get them. They're few and far between. But when they do happen, we're like, this is great. This feels so natural. So for sure in the future. So once the damn strike ends.
Yeah. I mean,
Exactly.
well, listen, the strike. So, I mean, you two love performing. You love being on stage together. Why not a musical?
Ding.
Yeah.
A musical
Sure.
would be hot.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'm into it.
We've kind of talked about like infiltrating every part of entertainment, like Aly and I on Broadway together, Aly and I in an animated show together, Aly and I on a reality travel series together, Aly and I, like, we're like, there could be so many things that we do together. Not to say like every single thing is going to be equally compelling, but I do think there are like a lot of fun things you could do with two sisters.
Of course.
Why can't
And
Kate
I mean,
and Rooney Mara have this level of camaraderie? Girls, work together one time. Yeah.
I know they should do a movie
They
together.
should. Why not?
I don't
But-
understand. Yes.
but the movie I
agree.
want them to do is about their family football empires. I want like a dueling family
Yes.
football
Yes.
empire film, like
Yes.
based on their real lives.
I agree with that. I actually think that would be fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, gonna wrap this up, but I mean, like, even just my question about like a Broadway thing and thinking about like something you guys write, like you write so much for yourselves and your own voices. Like, are there like, I was thinking like if you did a Broadway thing, you could make like your own waitress or something, and it got me thinking about like a Sarah Bareilles or something, and I'm like, are there voices, like singers that you like contemporaries, like people you love now that you're sort of like you would love to write something for them, hear them singing one of your songs?
Oh, that's a cool idea.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's funny. We've never really like dipped our toe into writing for other artists. We always spend the time writing for ourselves. And you know, it's funny because like it's such a different headspace to put yourself in to write for another artist, especially if it's an artist that has a totally different style of music than yourself. But AJ and I, there was like a couple songs that we had that we were like, this would be perfect for Olivia Rodrigo. Not that she needs any help in like writing music or anything. Like, she's obviously killing it and she's a songwriter herself. But I remember there were a couple songs that we had written from like years ago that we were like, we should try to get this over to Olivia's camp. Who knows if it ever ended up making it to her. But yeah, we would definitely be open to writing music for another artist. I don't know who exactly that artist would be. I'd have to think about it. But
Same.
But women, it would be cool writing for like either a female, you know, band or really writing with like, you know, writing with another band that is in our same kind of sphere. You know, we've met some really cool artists through just putting new music out and seeing that they're fans of our music. And we've talked about co-writing with them, like Beach Bunny and Samia, like just little like DMs here and there where we've been like, we should collaborate together. You know, who knows if it ends up ever happening, but we've become kind of DM buddies. So we'll see if maybe that ends up leading to something, you know, down the line.
Love that. Well, thank you so much for being here, ladies.
Oh my God, what a pleasure.
Thanks for
Yes,
having
it's
us.
good to see you. Brangelina, Kimye, and now Spongeriana Grandbob. I don't know.
Slay.
Love is dead. And here we are at Keep It to Mourn It. Where have all the good celebrity relationships gone? Is Venus in retrograde? Is this a holdover from like COVID, like the snapback or something? Because I feel like Sofia Vergara and Joe Manganiello, you know, Tina Knowles and Richard Lawson, that one hit me. I was shocked until someone showed me like a old like Instagram from like 7 weeks ago or something where someone wrote, where's Tina? She hasn't been in your like Instagram photos lately. And Richard responded to them, she's on tour with Beyonce.
I will say,
you know what? I would always pick Beyonce over my husband.
That's it is relatable. I will say, when people despair over couples breaking up, I kind of get it, but at the same time, when people break up, usually it's time to break up. I can't say I'm like sitting around being like, oh, stay together. Like, no, like you should do what you want with your life. It's just a weird instinct we have, I think.
Yeah, and I think the thing is like the thing that makes the Ariana and SpongeBob of it all, I think especially potent and powerful right now, is that over the last decade or so, you've really seen like celebrity culture, specifically a celebrity monoculture, disappear. Like there are so few huge stars that we focus on. Like there are celebrity quote unquote breakups that happen quite frequently, but oftentimes when I see the headlines, it's two people that I've never heard of who have 20 million followers on YouTube, and I've just never these people have never crossed my paths in my entire life. And I feel like you see that in the way that we talk about celebrity breakups now. It's just, there is no Brangelina because there is no Angelina Jolie and Brad Pitt. Like you just don't see A-list stars like dating and breaking up anymore because they're like, what is considered the A-list anymore? Because our culture is so fractured. And I think like Ariana is one of the rare exceptions to that because everybody knows and loves Ariana Grande and is so familiar with her. And this is such an interesting, and I think it's notable when someone hot dates someone who is considered largely unattractive by a lot of the culture.
We're like, what's going on there? What's the X factor? Yes, we want to know. But also, I was just thinking, somebody was describing the Taylor Swift Eras Tour to me. Why they were doing this, I can't tell you. I don't know why, but they were doing it. And I realized, what other superstars have emerged in, I mean, Taylor Swift predates 2010, but really in the 2010s. You know, like Ariana Grande is A-lister, would I call her a superstar? Like verging on it. But like Taylor Swift is a superstar. Who else? You know, I mean, like Jennifer Lawrence kind of, and then she sort of receded, you know? It's interesting. So you're right. Like news like this doesn't hit often. And you know, once upon a time, a celebrity breakup is just everything you would talk about. The vision of helicopters flying over the wedding of Madonna and Sean Penn. I mean, that's just a bygone era, you know?
It's also mostly because these pop stars have also sort of like hidden themselves away. I feel like the Ariana news really sort of hit only when we found out about, you know, the relationship with Ethan Slater, you know, SpongeBob, you know, the Bach in the movie. Because at first it was Ariana Grande's getting a divorce. And did anybody give a fuck? Because we didn't even know who her husband was. Like she got married to him in the middle of COVID. They had basically a secret relationship. Like he stayed out of the public eye the same way that like people talked about Taylor and Joe Alwyn for like a day or so, but like we never saw them together. They weren't on red carpets. They had no sort of identity as a couple, especially as a celebrity couple, because he doesn't even really have an identity like as a big celebrity, you know? But once the affair like sort of element was added to it, like, oh, did Ariana break up a marriage? Like, oh, and like, you know, like now was she cheating on her husband? That sort of added a little bit of flavor to it where now everybody can't stop talking about it.
Well, and also too, I think like another thing you don't see that is specific to this breakup that you don't see as much anymore is so much of the machinations in the press, like the strategy of like leaking certain things to create a narrative around, because you saw that when she was just breaking up with her husband, like there was obviously things being leaked from Ariana's camp that then would become headlines about the husband and like how they were drifting apart and all of these things. And now, especially with the Ethan Slater and Ariana of it all, there's all of these leaks happening that you can definitely tell is Ariana's camp trying to sort of control the narrative around the breakup, where so many celebrity quote unquote breakups now happen so chaotically in front of our eyes on social media. They're not really being like sort of trying to be controlled. The narratives are being controlled in the press specifically, which is like, it's a fun like throwback to when we had actual stars breaking up.
No, you're right. I think most breakups now with so-called luminaries of social media, now we get like an hour and a half explainer video about why they won't be, unboxing things together anymore. And it's, it's not salacious or giving, shall we say.
Well, that's just every gay now.
Right.
What's also interesting, too, is the fact that I feel like there are more single celebrities now, or maybe that's not a thing that's just always been there. But I don't know. It just feels like people are single more, or the celebrities who are dating people are marrying people who just aren't other mega celebrities like themselves. I mean, like it happens, but that era, like, of Madonna and Sean Penn, etc., even like Beyonce and Jay-Z, and when Taylor was dating celebrity after celebrity, like there's been a conscious choice of these women lately, even like Gaga, like selecting men who are out of the public eye so that they themselves can retreat from the public eye in a way that celebrities didn't really need to in the 90s and early 2000s. And I wonder if it's part conscious choice, but also just because they aren't hanging out with other celebrities in the way that celebrities used to hang out. Because, for instance, you don't see stuff like in New York here, right? Like there's no really like celebrity hotspot restaurants or things anymore that like Leo or like people go to because everyone has a fucking camera. Because so they want to be left alone. And so if they're finding somebody, it's probably someone, that like is hooked up to them by like a publicist or by like a close friend, because like they're certainly not going to be on dating apps the way people are screenshotting those and sharing all that info. So I mean, like if there are no hot spots where celebrities are just going and like letting their hair down without cameras or like paparazzi being around, are they even in spaces where like you're a hot celebrity who's sort of A-B list and you see another hot A-B list celebrity that like you've always thought was hot? You're not going to be at a party and hook up with them and then maybe start dating them anymore.
Who's the actress who posted that dinner party with all white people that got in trouble recently?
Oh, there were a whole bunch of people there. It was like Kristen Bell and Jennifer Aniston.
Yeah, Kristen Bell. Kristen Bell, who's in every social media post. Like she really makes the rounds. She's a very popular girl. But yeah, I feel like it's what makes moments like that so interesting is that like you don't see celebrities hang out like in big groups like that as much as you used to. Like, I don't know if everything just seems so fragmented now, I think is part of it.
Definitely. By the way, I don't know how we can do this, but how do we create news cycles around celebrities who are just single their whole lives? And that's like you're talking about how more celebrities probably are single now than we realize. But for instance, Bonnie Hunt, the mother of a generation, never married, no kids. How can we create interest around her as a tabloid figure? Dana Delaney on Twitter tweeting about TCM probably right now. What can we do to talk about how she is a cineast and rad person?
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm trying to think of like who else is of that age. Kylie Minogue, right. Nobody talks about Kylie being single for so long, and
right, she
not even a string of lovers.
No, the Olivier Martinez Once Upon a Time, right, Ira? But otherwise, I don't really know anything about Kylie's love life. She's interesting in that way. She's both. It's really all about the music, and you have to be gay to understand it. So that's a hushed conversation.
I feel like the men sort of get away with that more. I mean, there was the bygone era where, like if a man was single for so long, it's like, is he gay? But now I just feel like the men are so, like, I feel like and obviously like Drake has a child with like that one woman. But like, do you really even hear about like him being in a relationship? You just sort of assume that he's just like sleeping with women from time to time and then just moving on, Like I've never really heard of like a big Drake relationship, aside from like when he was dating Serena Williams or J-Lo.
I forgot about both of those.
Yeah,
wow,
yeah.
crazy.
That seems completely made up to me, but I trust you.
You remember that on my 23rd birthday, I went miniature golfing, and then who emerged from the miniature golf? Serena Williams and Common. That's the biggest celebrity thing I've ever seen in my life. And all I could think was, I wonder if Serena Williams is bad at miniature golf. Like, what if she just like completely choked at a sport?
Well, one thing about Common is he is ran through.
Yeah, definitely.
I feel like everybody has dated Common.
I remember the Laura Dern Common era very vividly.
But yeah, I mean, I was looking at celebrities from the 2010s, being like, who else would we even care about, you know? And I was like, there are a lot of people who are famous and like people see them in concert, and you know, like a Ed Sheeran. I didn't even know he was married. And I was like, does anybody give a fuck who Ed Sheeran dates or is married to?
No,
do we care about
right.
who most of these celebrities are with?
Maybe in the tabloid era, finding out people were together felt like a catch because you weren't guaranteed access to celebrities. And now, since they're so chronically available to us, it's like, well, okay, of course, you're together. And now we have to hear about it 5 times a week.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I feel like that's part of the reason why award shows it's like one of the many reasons why award shows are less interesting to see is because it used to be so fun. This is when you saw celebrities interact for the first time, and you really saw these relationships like sort of on the main stage. And yet now it celebrity culture is just so oversaturated with, you know, C and D list people now that it's hard to care.
Just to let you know, if you denigrate award shows one more fucking time on this podcast, I'm going to slap in your pretty little face. Watch your fucking mouth. You sound like a goddamn animal.
You know what? I feel like it's not the exact reason why, you know, like Barbie is still making so much fucking money, but like Ryan Gosling and Margot Robbie feel like stars, you know? And like, I feel like this has propelled her in a way that her other movies haven't. And this movie reminded us like how much we all love Ryan Gosling. And you know what's interesting about both of them? Neither of them have social media.
Mm-hmm.
We are not
right.
oversaturated with either of them. They vanish when they're not doing a project. And then when they are doing a project, they're on a carpet and you're seeing them again. You know, I feel like if you were constantly seeing Margot Robbie on Instagram,
making a salad on live. Yeah.
How long can she plank?
Yeah.
Hawking skin cream. Like, you wouldn't give a fuck about it anymore, you know? I mean, someone brought that up in conversation with, you know, Nicole Kidman doing the AMC ad, which is obviously iconic. And, you know, has had everybody talking about her for an entire fucking year. Someone brought up the fact that like celebrities used to do that shit all the time, but they would do commercials in like Japan or something, you know, because doing a commercial in the US would dilute your brand.
You're right. I have not thought about the fact that I know actually very little about Ryan Gosling's life other than he is still with Eva Mendes, right? So
yeah, you know,
yeah. So maybe we feel kind of privileged to get to see him be silly or something, you know.
Meanwhile, you see Jennifer Garner, you know, in a Capital One ad every other day, you know, but it used to be.
It feels like home. It honestly does feel like home. You know?
But also, I know Jennifer Garner a bit too well now, you know? So when a Jennifer Garner movie comes out, it's like, well, I'll see you on Hulu.
Right. We've exhaled too many times, in fact, for Jennifer Garner.
So really what I'm advocating for is a thing that I feel like Louis and I have advocated for since the invention of Keep It, to be honest. Celebrities should delete their social media.
Thank you so much.
It's never been helpful for most of them. And now I feel like in this era where there's like, where social media is also so fucking fractured, like there's fucking X and like a Threads or like a Instagram, you know, it's like, what is the point? I was trying to use Threads the other day and I was like, they haven't even added like a search feature or these other things to it. And then I really was just thinking like, do I even really need to be downloading a new social media thing and using it and putting a new version of myself out into the world? No, delete it.
No. Again, once upon a time, I used to dream of meeting Madonna, and now I dream of proofreading her Instagram. Okay, that's the change.
Madonna's just sitting in Washington Square Park, okay? Like probably filming TikToks.
Right. Yeah.
She is
several.
She is far too accessible these days.
Yeah, right.
All right. When we are back, it's our favorite segment of the episode, Keep It. And we are back with our favorite segment of the episode, Keep It. Joel, as our guest of honor, why don't you go first?
Yeah, I guess the thing that I wanted to talk about, Ira, you sort of alluded to it earlier in the episode, but I think we've entered into the era where I no longer need to see an interaction screenshot of a dating website or app on your social media. Like, absolutely keep those to yourself forever and ever and always. No one is coming out on top of these interactions anymore. Every single time someone posts a screenshot from Tinder or Grindr or any of these apps, it is always, always, always posting your own loss every single time. You become the villain in your own story. I don't know what it is about rejection or someone, coming at you in a completely benign way on an internet dating app that makes people lose all sense of right and wrong. And yet they keep and continue to post about it. And it's wild. It's every single time.
No, it's like the person who has to burst into tears in front of the entire cafeteria so that somebody will ask them about their breakup. No, get away from me. I'm eating my fries.
Do people do that often, Louis?
I went to a weird high school. We were bored in the U.S. People cried in public.
You're bullying Josie Grossi at school. No, I feel like first of all, whenever someone posts like a Grindr screenshot in particular, it's usually you take two seconds to like take like a longer glance at it, and it's like you basically set up this conversation so that you would have material to post online. I mean, there's plenty of every time someone posts a screenshot from Grindr, if you go to their profile on Twitter, without fail, that's usually all they do. And it's like you are not being particularly funny in your responses to someone. No. And then also it makes you seem weird because you're not actually on this app to find someone to create an interaction with. You're just farming content for people to respond to online. And I think that we've also just sort of lost the idea that human beings interacting with each other is always going to be weird because we're all different people. And someone saying sort of like the wrong thing to you or something that like sounds weird, or maybe they meant something else, is just like what it's like having a conversation with somebody. But now people take anything that seems almost weird and it's like, well, this person's demented. Isn't that funny?
Yeah. And it's so much, it's like oftentimes like people like, it's not even like it used to be when you saw a Grindr screenshot. It was someone being sort of outrageously racist or something a little bit more like black and white. But now it's sort of like, hey, do you want to meet up at this restaurant? And it's like, how dare this person ask me to travel away from my home to a different neighborhood to meet at a restaurant on Grindr? And it's always like where it's impossible to see where they're coming from most of the time now, in terms of the person who's posting the screenshot.
Right. It's people treating themselves as a reliable authority when it's like, I don't know who the fuck you are, or why the fuck you would post this, or why you think there's some caching in posting a private interaction and then having the rest of the world, which is strangers, judging the interaction. Very strange. Yeah.
It's sort of this idea that everyone thinks they're Carrie Bradshaw, like commenting on dating and sexuality, but what they always miss about that, at least in the original series, is that Carrie, and then as Candace Bushnell called herself, when she was writing Sex and the City, was a sexual anthropologist in her own words. Like, the Carrie in this story would go to the restaurant and meet this person because you're interested in finding out who this person is or what this interaction might be. Now people just are sort of in their heads that their authority is on dating, and it's any word that someone says to them that doesn't align with how they think things should go, like that's weird or interesting and stuff. Like no one's actually interested in, investigating anything anymore.
Yeah, no, because everyone is the main character of their own life.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
It's impossible to not look at yourself that way.
I do though. No, I will say I do like the apps like Raya and things which do not let you screenshot. I think every dating app should prevent people from being able to screenshot it. Then maybe hotter people and like celebrities or something would be on Grindr again.
Well, thank you for that vision of a brighter future. Yes. Okay, good. We're on the right track. Yes.
Louis, what is your keep it this week?
I'm going to go ahead and criticize a tweet, a real old school keep it. I'll read the tweet to you guys. Katy Perry has no identity as a pop star outside of Teenage Dream had hits. There's no edge, no narrative, no aesthetic. When she stopped making hits, she stopped being a relevant pop star. This tweet is by, oh my God, Ira, it's by you. I didn't even see that.
Fuck you, Louis.
It's your face. Hold on. Sorry. This is awkward.
Are you coming out as a Katy cat?
Say what? I will say, when I saw Katy Perry's Vegas show, I came out a huger fan. That was a well-realized masterpiece. Yes, Joel was very much there.
I have to agree, and I have to say, Ira, I think the thing you're ignoring about Katy Perry's brand is sketch comedy. I think like out of all of the pop stars, I think she is our greatest sketch comedian.
Yeah.
And the comedy of it all, and I'm saying that sort of jokingly, but the more I think about it, the more I actually connected to her Vegas show. There is like a whimsy, there is like a pageantry, like there is almost honestly like a Paul Rubin-esque.
Yeah,
like,
definitely.
Like especially to her Vegas show. Her Vegas show was definitely influenced by Pee-wee's Playhouse. And there is like that element of play that I don't think we're seeing outside of maybe a certain era of like Miley Cyrus, possibly. But like, I do think that Katie's distinct in that way.
I think the thing is she's actually all aesthetic. You know, it's like actually nobody has a more stronger aesthetic brand as a pop star than Katy Perry. Like this, just the goofballs. You're right. Like her Vegas show is like a combination of Honey, I Shrunk the Kids and the Kids' Choice Awards and Pee Wee Herman. And I think just what happened to her is the songs became worse. You know, it's like when you have an album like Teenage Dream and the hits are that good and you follow it up with even like Roar, which was a big hit, I think is worse than all of the songs that were on the other album. And I think just she hasn't, like even like Swish Swish, like these are all, like Bon Appetit, a song I defend. It felt a little bit like she had already done that before. So I think maybe what you're reacting to is she didn't expand her aesthetic or do anything
That's
interesting.
fair.
You know?
I will accept that. I do get that she is sort of all aesthetic. I mean, I haven't seen the Vegas show, but I mean, I did love the Super Bowl performance. And I did sort of like that early sort of fun, playful vibes you had like last Friday night, like that video, you know, or like even like California Girls. If she had leaned into comedy or the aesthetic and sort of went there, then I would be more on board. I think my main thing about Katy Perry is you can't really conjure up in your brain like what a Katy Perry album should sound like, you know, like what her music sounds like, because you have Teenage Dream, which is basically Dr. Luke. And then you have, you know, One of the Boys, which I thought was a bit more interesting as an album too. Like I felt like it was a bit more like Liz Phair. Like I felt like it was more rockish and like she seemed like a really interesting figure when that came out. But each album for her, I think because Teenage Dream was such a big smash, has just been chasing whatever flavor is going to be like a pop hit. And when you're doing that every album, you're never going to establish sort of just what you do best.
I think
so when she's always trying to find something else, well, what you find might be bad. And what she found was bad.
I think the thing with her is she was always going to fade eventually. You know, the way that pop stars fade, like they, you know, turn 36 or whatever, the magical age where you're not as interesting or interesting to the public anymore is. She just faded faster than expected, at least in terms of chart relevance.
Well, and have either one of you guys dipped in on one of her seasons of American Idol? Because I will say, like, I'm a recent convert. I recently started watching the new seasons of American Idol, and she's kind of an excellent judge.
Oh, yeah.
She is sort of the de facto Simon in a lot of ways. And, like, yes, there's a lot of cheese involved in this. Now they're not nearly as mean as they used to be because of the way reality shows have shifted. But I will say, like, there is something very distinct about her style on that show, and it endears me to Katy Perry even more so than her music ever has, watching her be a judge on that show.
Yeah, I think she's particularly valuable during the auditions, where when someone is bizarre or gives a bad audition or something, she can sort of give you the like, those like cartoon like scared eyes or whatever, and she is funny. She's funny in that context.
I think actually the American Idol thing is interesting because she's on that show and the way that Paula Abdul is on that show, and I think that maybe because of the era that Katy came up during, and also what the sort of like the feud with Taylor Swift sort of like elevated her a bit too in the sort of pop culture consciousness. She seemed like a celebrity who, if not was going to fade away later, was going to have a bit more staying power or continue to be A or B list, And I mean, like, we obviously grew up, like seeing Paul on the show after, her celebrity had faded, or, there's always like a Debbie Gibson, or like someone who was like a pop star for like 2 or 3 albums or something in the 80s or like the 90s, and now they're just sort of like around doing reality TV competitions or whatever. And I guess I just never saw Katy as zooming towards that right away. When so many of her other contemporaries seem to have at least like been able to release more than 2 relevant albums.
The thing is, though, like being a judge on American Idol, I do not think is the same thing now as it was with Paula Abdul. I do not think it's like waving the white flag necessarily, because the way that those shows work now, it's so much less about the contestants and breaking like an actual star from the pool of contestants, and so much more about who they get to judge or coach those shows. Like The Voice is never like is not interested in producing a star at all. It is only interested in getting the biggest names to be those coaches now.
And that's literally maybe the highest paying job on television at this point, the way Katy Perry gets paid on that show and the judges on The Voice. So you're right, it's like completely different, where Paula took seasons to garner a real paycheck on American Idol. But anyway, Ira,
that's fair.
What is your keep it this week?
Well, I think you know what this is, Louis. So let's tit for tat.
Okay. The tables have turned. The red table has turned.
Your Barbie review.
Oh, go ahead.
Why did you hate this movie so much?
It's weird for me. It's weird for me too that people have characterized it as hating. I just didn't think it was that good. I thought Margot was amazing in it. I just didn't think the message hit, and I thought the big feminist speech felt like AI wrote it. That's it.
I'm mostly joking. I think that I liked the movie quite a bit. My actual real keep it goes to I feel like the idea that you hating the movie was sort of you stomping into Greta Gerwig's home and shooting her point blank in the head. I actually did not mind you not liking the movie that much. Matt liked it a lot. I feel like you two talked about that in a fairly fair discussion on the show. And here I was on vacation being bombarded with DMs from people being like, you better get on Keep It and defend Barbie. Girl, I do not care that much. The movie.
I fucking love Greta Gerwig, by the way. Lady Bird is one of my favorite movies of the past 20 years. Little Women, enjoyed. Also, every Greta Gerwig interview I'm listening to. I'm a real fan.
Yeah, I think one thing about this movie that's been very interesting to me is that as it's reaching like the $1 billion mark, is that people have sort of taken it on as an identity and are becoming very defensive of it. And it's sort of ironic in the way that the movie makes a joke about Zack Snyder bros, in that there are sort of like, the women of Themyscira are out there, with their Wonder Woman shields, ready to kill anybody who does not like the movie. Sort of saying, it's not for men, it's not for you to be commenting on. And my thing is, I actually feel like the movie is in conversation with men for so much of it. It really has a lot to say about manhood and about, sort of loving yourself and sort of
literally builds
finding
a
yourself
patriarchy.
worth.
Yes, right.
Right.
Uh-huh.
He has a dance, he has a whole, Oklahoma dream dance. So the movie's about men, and so I think it's fair for people to, not enjoy it. Also, unfortunately, we're 2 men who host this show. And so, like the same way Roger and it's the same way Siskel and Ebert, or like Ebert and Roper would have to review something. Like we're reviewing something when it comes out. The difference is Crooked does not have any other pop culture show that was reviewing Barbie, so they put our video online, and that's why
if you don't want a review of Barbie from a man, then it's a very skippable segment. It's really easy to self-select the reviews, and we do this all the time. I think I do this all the time with film criticism. I don't just listen to any review or read any review. There are people that I trust, and there are people that I'm interested in hearing about certain movies, and you can't just be interested in Lewis's opinion about this movie if it's positive. It's very easy to just if Lewis had given it a positive review, no one would have been saying you're a man, we don't want to hear about your opinion on this movie. I think it's very easally, if you're in a place where you don't want to hear a man's opinion about this movie, which is totally fair, then don't listen to Keep It that week.
Also, I want to say I actually relate to people who had for instance, one of my favorite movies of the past decade is 45 Years with Charlotte Rampling and Tom Courtenay. Great movie if you haven't seen it. Andrew Haigh, who did Weekend and the Looking TV show, he directed that movie, fabulous movie. I saw a review of it, a YouTube review of this, a very prominent movie lover, and he called it boring. And to hear him say that made me think, I was riveted by this movie. We clearly didn't see the same movie, or you weren't paying attention to this movie. Why am I paying attention to your opinion? And there is something about seeing a review like that makes you think you so aren't being heard that you feel like you have to voice it. And I get that. Particularly when it's a movie about a woman and you're hearing a guy, it's I'm a gay guy. I feel like I'm usually in the position of these Barbie fans, defending a movie with starring a woman or whatever. So I relate to that. I relate to that experience.
It's so strange. I do think we're just living in a moment right now where taste is so connected to whether or not you're a good person too, that it now it's really hard to disagree about taste without feeling like it's a personal attack on yourself. And I don't know. I just feel like sometimes people need to back away from that idea. And I think Louis and I have very different opinions about the Barbie movie, and that's okay. I don't implicitly think that Louis thinks I'm a stupid person for having a different opinion.
Now that you mention it though, no.
And I feel Richard Brody, for instance, at the New Yorker, he loved it. He hated Oppenheimer, which I haven't seen yet. But I like when he dislikes a movie that I like, or I like when he likes a movie that I hated. I feel like if you are interested in we need to get back to the notion that if you're interested in someone's taste and you're interested in the way that they see the world, then you should be interested in what they think about a certain piece of culture, whether or not they like it or whether or not they love it. And maybe, sure, sometimes they may get it wrong. Maybe sometimes they'll, take it back. But I just think you have to be able to just take this push and pull, I found the movie a lot funnier than Louis did. I did not enjoy the speech, though, although I will say I feel like Greta knew that speech was giving Twitter, Tumblr, Reblog, because I thought the whole funny part of the joke, and including Alan and hearing it, was that then they had to kidnap all the other Barbies and she had to keep repeating this dumb speech over and over again. Right. I thought the joke is this is just a commonplace speech that you're giving. I thought basically the film felt a little bit Greta doing pop culture criticism to me. And I thought it was in conversation, with her other movies, but you don't have to like everything,
Greta Gerwig is my birthday twin. She will be turning 40. I will be turning 37 on the same day, and I cherish that connection. Yeah. And also everything she does. If you have not seen fucking Mistress America, that movie slaps up and down. I fucking love that movie.
Plus, is anyone shocked that Louis did not like Barbie? Because we know what version of femininity you love to see on a screen.
Go ahead.
Okay,
yeah,
it's old. Yeah. It's staring out windows.
Yeah. Yeah, Stella Dallas. It's Barbara Stanwyck 37, motherfucker.
It's someone stern in a turtleneck or a severe coat.
I have to actually clutch this table. I'm feeling so seen. Yes.
Anyway, that's our episode. So thank you to Joel for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Joel, my God, anytime. I mean, one of my, Joel is family to me, but otherwise just come. If you just want to barge into the Zoom, whatever, go ahead.
Absolutely.
And thank you to Aly and AJ for being here. We'll see you next week.